My billionaire husband texted me he was bringing his ex-wife to our family dinner. I almost dropped my phone. After 3 years of marriage, why now? I had no idea this dinner would expose secrets that would change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the family I married into. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't believe how this unfolds. And stick around until the end, the twist will leave you speechless. Now let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was standing in our penthouse kitchen in Boston, chopping vegetables for a salad I planned to bring to dinner. The late autumn sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything golden. I remember thinking how perfect the moment felt, how wrong I was. My phone buzzed on the marble countertop. A text from Thomas, my husband, the man I'd loved for 4 years, married for 3. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked it up, expecting something sweet or maybe a reminder about what time we needed to leave. Instead, I read words that made my heart stop. Bringing Catherine to dinner tonight. Wanted to give you a heads up. See you there. I read it 3 times. Catherine, his ex-wife, the woman he'd been married to for 10 years before I even knew he existed. The woman whose shadow I'd spent 3 years trying not to think about. And now she was coming to our monthly family dinner at his parents' house. No explanation, no context, just those 2 sentences that felt like a bomb going off in my chest. I called my best friend Lauren immediately. She picked up on the second ring, and I could barely get the words out. She told me to breathe, to stay calm, to trust my husband. But trust felt slippery in that moment. Trust felt like something I was holding with wet hands. Still, what choice did I have? I couldn't call Thomas and demand answers. I couldn't show up looking insecure or threatened. So I did what I'd learned to do in the 3 years of being married into the Reed family. I put on my armor, wore my best dress, and prepared to smile through whatever was coming. Let me tell you something about being a black woman married to a white billionaire. It's not like the movies. There's no fairy tale music playing in the background. Every room you walk into, you feel eyes on you. Every family gathering, you're proving yourself. And Thomas's mother, Margaret, had made it clear from day one that I would never be good enough. She was polite, of course. Old money people are always polite. But I could feel her coldness like winter air every time we were in the same room. The drive to Cape Cod felt longer than usual. Thomas was supposed to meet me there because he had a late meeting. So I drove alone, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. Why Catherine? Why now? What was I walking into? When I pulled up to the Reed family mansion, the sun was setting, turning the sky pink and orange. The house looked like something out of a magazine, all stone and old money elegance. I'd been here dozens of times, but it never felt like home. It felt like a museum where I was always a visitor. Margaret answered the door. Her smile was tight, barely reaching her eyes. "Diana," she said, my name sounding like an obligation in her mouth. "Come in, Thomas isn't here yet." She didn't mention Catherine, didn't prepare me. Just stepped aside and let me walk into whatever trap was waiting. Charles, Thomas's father, gave me a warmer greeting. He was kinder than his wife, though still distant in that way wealthy white men can be when they don't know what to say to you. "Good to see you, Diana," he said, squeezing my shoulder briefly before retreating to the living room with his scotch. I was setting my salad bowl on the dining room table when I heard the front door open. Thomas's voice carried down the hallway, and then another voice, light, feminine, confident. My stomach twisted. They walked into the dining room together, and I got my first real look at Catherine in person. I'd seen photos, of course, old pictures from Thomas's past that I'd stumbled across in albums, but seeing her in real life was different. She was tall, slender, with blonde hair styled perfectly and a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my car. She looked like she belonged in this house, like she'd never left. "Diana," she said, her voice warm and friendly in a way that felt performative. "I've heard so much about you. It's wonderful to finally meet you properly." She extended her hand, and I shook it, feeling the coolness of her skin against mine. Thomas looked uncomfortable. His jaw was tight, and he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Hey," he said to me, leaning in to kiss my cheek. It felt obligatory, distant, nothing like the way he usually greeted me. We sat down to dinner, and that's when I noticed the seating arrangement. Usually, I sat next to Thomas. Tonight, I was placed 3 seats away. Catherine was next to him, in what I suddenly realized used to be her spot, next to Margaret, like no time had passed at all. The conversation started innocently enough. Weather, business, safe topics. But then it shifted. Margaret started asking Catherine about people I didn't know, events I'd never attended. "Remember that summer in the Hamptons?" she'd say, laughing. Catherine would laugh too, touching Thomas's arm as she reminisced, and Thomas would smile, but it was a sad smile, a nostalgic smile, like he was remembering a life he'd lost. I sat there pushing food around my plate, feeling more invisible with every passing minute. They talked about charity galas they'd attended together, about inside jokes I couldn't understand, about a version of Thomas I'd never known. And through it all, Margaret kept glancing at me with this satisfied look, like she was winning something. Charles made a toast before the main course. "To family," he said, raising his glass, "to bonds that never break, no matter what changes." Margaret added, "Some people are family forever, no matter what papers say." Her eyes flicked to me when she said it. The message was clear. I watched Catherine's hand rest on Thomas's across the table, watched him not pull away, and something inside me cracked. I excused myself, mumbling something about the bathroom, and walked out before anyone could see the tears building in my eyes. The bathroom was down the hall, past the study. I locked myself inside and gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection. I looked beautiful, I'd made sure of that, but I felt small, unwanted, like I was being erased from my own marriage right in front of my eyes. That's when I heard the voices. Coming from the study? The door must have been cracked open because I could hear them clearly. Margaret's voice, and Catherine's. I should have walked away, should have gone back to the dining room, but something kept me frozen there, listening. "I knew bringing you here would remind him what he's missing," Margaret was saying. Her voice was different than it had been at dinner. Sharper, more honest. 3 years was long enough to let him play house, Catherine replied. There was smugness in her tone, satisfaction. My heart started pounding. I moved closer to the study door, staying in the shadows. "She's not one of us, Catherine," Margaret continued. "You know it, I know it, and deep down, Thomas knows it too. He was trying to rebel, trying to prove something, but that phase is over." Catherine laughed softly. "The business deal should seal it. Once his board sees us together at the charity gala next month, questions will start. Investors prefer stability. They prefer people they understand." "Exactly," Margaret said. "We just need to make her uncomfortable enough that she starts to doubt herself. Make her feel like she doesn't belong. Eventually, she'll leave on her own. Thomas won't have to be the bad guy, and we can all move forward." I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. They were planning to push me out, to manipulate me into leaving my own marriage, and they were doing it together, like some twisted team. "What about Charles?" Catherine asked. "Charles doesn't need to know the details," Margaret said dismissively. "He'll go along with whatever makes Thomas happy. And once Diana's gone, Thomas will remember who he really is." I stood there in that hallway, tears streaming down my face, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. Part of me wanted to run, to get in my car and drive away from this house, this family, this whole life that clearly didn't want me. But then I heard my grandmother's voice in my head. She'd passed 2 years ago, but her words were still clear. "Never let anyone make you small, baby girl. You stand tall, you take up space, you belong anywhere you choose to belong." I wiped my tears, pulled out my phone, and I did something I'd never done before. I opened my recording app, walked quietly closer to the study door, and I recorded them. Every word, every plan, every cruel assumption about who I was and where I belonged. When they finished talking and I heard them moving toward the door, I slipped back down the hallway and into the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, fixed my makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror. This time, I didn't see someone small. I saw someone who had a choice to make. I walked back into that dining room with my head high. Everyone was eating dessert now, and the conversation had shifted to some business merger Thomas was working on. They barely noticed me sit down. But I noticed everything. The way Margaret smiled at Catherine. The way Catherine leaned toward Thomas. The way my husband looked tired and trapped. I set my phone on the table in front of me, took a sip of wine, and then I spoke. "Catherine," I said, my voice calm and clear, "tell me about this business deal you mentioned." The room went silent. Catherine's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "I'm sorry?" "The business deal," I repeated, looking directly at her. "The one that requires you and Thomas to appear together at a charity gala next month. I'd love to hear more about it." Her face went pale. Margaret's hand tightened around her wine glass. Thomas sat up straighter, confusion written all over his face. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I smiled. Not a happy smile, a smile that said I knew everything. "I overheard a very interesting conversation a few minutes ago about how Catherine's presence here tonight is part of a plan, about how investors prefer stability and people they understand, about how I'm just a phase that needs to end." Margaret tried to interrupt. "Diana, I don't know what you think you heard." "I didn't think I heard anything," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I know exactly what I heard, and I have proof." I held up my phone. The recording was right there, 45 seconds of their voices plotting against me, against my marriage. Thomas stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Mother, what the hell is she talking about?" Margaret's composure cracked. "Thomas, sit down. This is between adults." "I am an adult," he said, his voice rising. "And Diana is my wife. So whatever this is, it involves me. Catherine, why are you really here?" Catherine looked at Margaret, panic in her eyes. Margaret tried one more time to control the situation. "This is ridiculous. We were simply having a private conversation about family matters." "Family matters," I interrupted. "Is that what you call plotting to destroy my marriage? Making me feel unwelcome so I'll leave on my own? Using Catherine to remind Thomas of his old life?" Charles set down his glass, looking between his wife and his son with shock. "Margaret, is this true?" And then it all came out. Catherine admitted that Margaret had called her 2 weeks ago, asked her to come to dinner, suggested that seeing her might remind Thomas of what he'd given up. Margaret defended herself with all the ugly truth she'd been hiding behind politeness for 3 years. She said I didn't fit into their world, that I embarrassed them at social events, that Thomas had married me to rebel against expectations, but that couldn't last forever. "She's not one of us," Margaret said finally, her mask completely gone. "You know it's true, Thomas. She doesn't understand our life, our responsibilities, our world." The room was silent. I could hear my own heartbeat. This was the moment where Thomas would either stand with me or prove that his mother had been right all along. Thomas looked at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Disgust, disappointment, anger. "You're right, Mother," he said quietly. "Diana doesn't understand cruelty disguised as propriety. She doesn't understand manipulating people you claim to love. She doesn't understand being so obsessed with appearances that you'd destroy your own son's happiness." He turned to Catherine. "We're divorced. We've been divorced for 5 years. I don't know what my mother promised you, but there is no business deal that requires us to be together. There's no gala where we need to appear as a couple, and if there was, I wouldn't go. I want you to leave. Now. And don't contact me again." Catherine left without another word. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed felt heavy and thick. But I wasn't done. I stood up and looked directly at Margaret. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. "I don't need your acceptance to know my worth," I said. "I didn't marry your family. I married Thomas, and for 3 years I've tried to make you like me, tried to fit into your world, tried to be enough for you, but I'm done with that. I am enough. I was always enough. Your opinion of me says everything about you and nothing about me. I turned to Thomas. I love you, but I won't stay in a marriage where I have to constantly prove I deserve to be here. So you need to choose, right now. Choose who you want in your life and what kind of family we're going to build. Thomas didn't hesitate. He took my hand and looked at his parents. Diana is my wife. She's my family. And if you can't respect her, then we won't be coming to these dinners anymore. We'll build our own traditions, with people who actually love us. Charles finally spoke up. Margaret, this has gone too far. Diana is family. She's been nothing but gracious to us, and you've treated her terribly. He looked at me. I'm sorry. I should have said something long ago. I was passive when I should have been protective. Margaret sat there, stunned into silence. For the first time since I'd known her, she had nothing to say. Thomas and I left that night. We drove back to Boston in silence at first, and then we talked, really talked, about his mother's behavior, about how he'd been too afraid of conflict to stand up for me, about how we needed boundaries, about how love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day. 3 months later, things are different. Margaret is in therapy. Charles insisted on it. He told her she'd lose her son completely if she didn't address her prejudices and her need for control. We still see Thomas's parents, but now it's on our terms. Dinner is at our house. We set the menu. We control the environment. And if Margaret steps out of line, we leave. Catherine? I heard she moved to California, started over. I hope she finds whatever she was looking for, because it clearly wasn't with Thomas. As for me, I learned something important that night. I learned that belonging isn't something other people give you, it's something you claim for yourself. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And I learned that love, real love, will choose you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I almost let them make me doubt myself, almost let their narrow view of the world convince me I was the problem. But I'm not the problem. I never was, and neither are you. If you've ever felt like you don't fit in, the right people won't make you shrink, they'll give you room to grow. That's my story. That's what happened when my billionaire husband brought his ex-wife to family dinner, and that's how I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to disappear. Can you believe that? I never imagined standing up for myself would change everything. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real stories about love, family, and finding your strength. And remember, never let anyone make you question your worth. Until next time, stay strong.